Welcome to part 15 of this learning JavaScript series. In this video, we're gonna do async await, which is gonna be another version of the same promise. This is gonna be the final video of this asynchronous stuff before we move on to the DOM. All right, so let's jump in where we left off. Resource, the same promise, and the promise takes in a callback, and the object returns to us, hands us a resolve reject, a resolve reject. So we're gonna fake our fetching time with a set timeout, like we have been doing on this series of videos. So takes the callback and let's say half a second, and then on the callback we are gonna, if the resource, if what we put in as a parameter in the myFetch function, if resource is equal to menu, then we bring in a a list of objects, name, latte, comma, price. I did not want to copy paste all the myFetch. We used it on the last video, but I wanted to type it as practice. I think this last comma, it's not necessary, but everybody keeps it. Everywhere I see everybody keeping it. Well, I guess not everybody, but so this is the list of objects we are resolving if resource is menu. So I forgot to resolve this. So we are gonna resolve there. So if resource is menu, resolve with the menu. Else if, and then if resource is equal to, and now I'm gonna change it up. Last time we did tax rate, we are gonna do today discount. This might be something stored on the DB database. And if the resource is today discount, we are gonna resolve. And what are we gonna resolve? The discount for today, which might be 0.01. And if the parameter put in my fetch function is not either menu or today discount, we are gonna else we are going to else with a reject could not fetch, and then plus resource like this. Control S. All right, appears that everything is good. So this is exactly the same as the promise from last video, right? The same promise. We have not seen the async await. So we are on the same page as last video. And last video we would have done something. Well, we ran a function that returns a promise, right? My fetch menu const O is equal to my fetch menu, and then O dot then, and then the then takes a callback. Remember, and then we console.log menu. I am forgetting menu again here. Or whatever, no? Let's do X. Am I missing something? Then I got a red squiggly line. Uncut, missing parentheses. I think it's just this colon, semicolon. Yes. That was ending the then dot too early. All right, here we go. Or how we were doing it yesterday without assigning this to an O. Just like this. Oops. Again with a top. There, same thing. Right, this is the same as last video. So now let's move on to the async await. Same thing, new syntax. Our my fetch function does not change. This still returns a promise, but now the then is what changes. So we do it like this: async, and then async function load menu. No params. And then const menu is equal to await my fetch menu, and console.log our menu. And then we need to call this load menu function with a parenthesis. Let's save to run. And there we go. Same thing. Here's our menu object. So let's look at this middle line because this one is a whole episode. So await does the waiting that .then used to do, but instead of putting your code inside a callback, it gives us the result value directly. And in this case, we are assigning it to a variable, right? The thing is that if we are going to get returned a promise, we need this await. And to use this await, we need to put it inside a function that is declared as an async function. So the real magic of this await and the real benefit is, remember last time we wanted to fetch the menu, and when it finished, fetch the, in this case, the discount. In the other case, it was a tax, but we fetched one, and then we had to include in the return of one, then another my fetch, and return that, and it was like a bit of nesting messiness, right? And with the await, let's do that to see how it's much more clearer. So we fetch for the menu. Then let's const menu dot find, and then this is from the same last video and the video from arrays. Find goes through the array and then runs each item on a callback. Like this, and we are going to find the dot name to be equal to latte, like this, and then const this count is going to be equal to wait, and then here we fetch again, but now we fetch for today this count. So really easy, it reads top to bottom. Price times 1 minus discount, and then we console log latte today, and then comma price dot to fixed, let's save. Uncut error. So cannot read the properties of latte.price. So that means this did not get assigned the object, because when I did the brackets and a new line, we need to explicitly return this. Return this, Control S. There we go, latte today. Or if it's a one-liner, we do it all on the same line. Let me get rid of also these parentheses. So is this nicer? Let me save again. There, latte today. So anyways, back to the real async function with the awaits. So again, if we're gonna await something, we need to put it inside the function with an async behind it always. But notice now how we did not nest anything. We just called myFetch and waited for the answer, and then it got assigned to the menu. Then we did something to it. Then we fetched again for the discount, waited, and assigned the answer to a discount variable. Then we used it to do something. All right, let's move on. So there's a catch, or there's a thing. This async function load menu, it's still asynchronous, and this still returns a promise immediately. And what do I mean by this? The two consequences of it's still a promise. Let's do an example. Let's do an async function get menu with no params, and inside here we are gonna get the menu, wait, like we did on the last example, my fetch, because my fetch returns a promise instead of the .then and stuff, the whole thing we did last time. Menu, simple enough, right? So if we were to erroneously think, hey, so let me just return the menu like this. Simple enough. And then we cons the result of running the get menu, run it here. So we run get menu, which is asynchronous. So it runs and then awaits my fetch, and when it finally awaited, gets the menu to the menu and then return the menu. And then we console.log the menu. And here, let's wait for 1 full second. So let me just console.log the menu inside here. Control S. Sorry, we returned menu, but we assigned the return value to a result. So here, result, then save. Here. Immediately, we console.log a promise. And then waited a second, and then console.log this menu. So this is taking time, right? And this remember, JavaScript keeps going. So when we run this get menu, this get run asynchronously, so waits for the my fetch and stuff, but it immediately returns something and then continues moving on. So it returns a promise. And so if we console.log what the get menu returns, we get this promise. So let me exaggerate this to 5 seconds. Clear this out, and then again, Control S, there, promise pending, and then after 5 seconds, here comes our console log inside the get menu after it finishes this await. Is this simple enough or not so much? All right, let's get going. So what happens now with the errors? So with async functions, we do they take the old try and catch we did way back in the errors video. We don't need to dot catch or like the .then and .catch of the promise. With the async function and the await, we try and catch let's do an example. So in the get menu, if we try to, let me delete the whole thing and start over. If we try and const specials equals wait my fetch with specials, and then we console.log the specials, and then we catch. Remember, it's like a if else. Here we get but we do get a message back that gets placed in here. Console.log failed error. Is this right? All right, no screaming. Now let's call the get menu with parentheses. So we're running the get menu, which has, we can get a menu, but we erroneously trying to get something that does not exist, like the special. So let's save. What happened? There, it just took forever. Let me have a second only. Control S. There. Failed. Could not fetch specials. Just for good measure, if we fetch the menu, there, we get our menu. Even though we called it specials, but fetching menu brings something back, right? Or today, it is count. Save, there, 0.1. So menu, and then we console.log the menu. Then we bring in the menu, save, here's the menu. And we erroneously tried to bring in, I don't know, oops, with a typo. There's a failed again. So just as an experiment, let's not try and catch anything. Let's just try to, like this, Control S. I'm not having any typo, right? We're trying to fetch something that does not exist. Let me make it more obvious, like beer. Control S. Uncut in promise, could not fetch beer. So yes, if we try this, it does break the JavaScript code. It throws an error that breaks the whole thing. And console.log hello world. So Control S. It keeps going, but then when finally the waiting 5 seconds are done and then tries to get beer, it throws out the error. So it would break the JavaScript anyways, even though it did went down and printed the hello world. All right, but that's my little experiment. So let me Control A, delete, and do this. Fetch menu. Oh no. Not all of it, only this. I still want my fetch. So my fetch menu, and then we are gonna dot then, and then we are gonna dot then again. In this dot then, we are gonna, guess what, have a callback. And return, and then we are gonna my fetch again. Today discount. And then this then takes this return. So this then, we should have a fill in with a callback. Console.log menu and discount both loaded. And then dot catch, and then guess what? Yes, a callback function. Console.log the error, but we need to error. Control S. All right. So this is the directly with the dot then syntax, right? Now, so this is a put side by side async function load. And then we try to await my fetch menu, and then we await my fetch today discount, and then we console.log the same here. We console.log here, and then we catch error, and then we console.log the error. So let me Control S. Yeah, we did not call the load. From the async there. So this is the main difference. Here we need to nest or link one dot then here, and then on the return we might fetch again. So that gets into this then, this linking thing, nesting things, and in the async it's just one my fetch await, one my fetch await. We don't need to nest this my fetch inside. So we did a my fetch this, and then on the then we might fetch inside of it. So this is the main difference between the async syntax and dot then and dot catch. And of course, if we break something like here, put beer, could not fetch beer, and over here, same, no? Could not fetch beer. So this is it. This is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. See you on the next one.